So when I say pharmacist, what's the first image that pops into your head? It's probably someone behind a counter counting out pills, right? And hey, you're not wrong. But that's just one piece of a much bigger, much more interesting puzzle. Today, we're going way beyond the counter to explore some of the hidden worlds of pharmacy that are totally reshaping how we think about patient care and even the entire healthcare system. Okay, so let's start with the pharmacist we all know and rely on. This is the person who's the final crucial checkpoint for our prescriptions. They're the ones we go to with questions, the experts who keep the whole pharmacy running smoothly. This is the essential frontline face of pharmacy, and they are absolutely vital. But what if that familiar role, as critical as it is really just the most visible part of something much, much deeper? You have to wonder, what other roles are pharmacists playing, often completely behind the scenes, that have a massive impact on our health? All right, let's pull back the curtain on our first hidden world, what I like to call the clinical frontier. This is where pharmacists are stepping out from behind the counter and becoming direct, hands-on members of your healthcare team. And believe me, it's fundamentally changing how medicine is practiced. The idea here is actually pretty simple, but it's incredibly powerful. The data is crystal clear. When pharmacists collaborate directly with doctors to actually manage a patient's care, that patient's health gets a whole lot better. It's about shifting the focus from just dispensing a drug to managing a person's overall therapy. So how does this actually work in the real world? Well, it's made possible by a formal partnership called a Collaborative Practice Agreement, or CPA for short. Think of it like a playbook. Under a CPA, a doctor can refer a patient to a pharmacist who's then empowered to do things like adjust medication dosages, order lab tests, and provide really in-depth counseling. And you might be thinking, okay, that sounds nice, but is this just some niche experiment? Absolutely not. Just look at this map. The vast majority of states already have laws on the books that authorize pharmacists to do this kind of advanced work. The legal framework for this evolution is already here, from coast to coast. And look, this isn't just a good idea on paper. This team-based approach, it delivers tangible real-world results. There have been landmark studies that put hard numbers on the benefits, and they show just how powerful this collaboration really is. For instance, a famous study called the Asheville Project looked at what happened when they integrated pharmacists into the care for employees with chronic diseases. The result? An average annual savings of over $3,000 per person. It turns out better, more hands-on care actually led to lower overall costs. And it wasn't just about the money. The very same study found that employees in the program took 50% fewer sick days. Half. That translates directly into better health, improved productivity, and a better quality of life. That's the power of having a pharmacist on the clinical team. Okay, so we've seen the pharmacist working closely with the individual patient. Now let's completely switch gears. We're going to zoom way out to look at the entire healthcare system. We're entering a totally different world, the world of the managed care pharmacist. And the difference in focus here is just stark. A retail pharmacist's number one goal is the health of the individual person standing right in front of them. A managed care pharmacist, on the other hand, is looking at the health of an entire population, thousands, even millions of people, and they're balancing clinical outcomes with cost control, using data and policy. One of the main tools in their world is something called prior authorization, or PA. You've probably heard of it, and maybe not in the most positive way. But from the system's point of view, it's a tool designed to make sure medications are being used appropriately, that they're safe, effective for the condition, and provide the best value under a given health plan. But it's not always a simple computer saying yes or no. This quote from a provider really gets to the heart of it. A request got flagged by the system, but when they pushed, it got escalated to a clinical pharmacist. And suddenly, the conversation shifted to a clinical discussion, showing the human judgment and expertise that's actually behind the process. So their process is really a clinical investigation, not just gatekeeping. Yeah, they first check the request against the standard rules, but then they dig into the clinical nuance. They're looking at labs, patient history. They might even call up the doctor to talk about alternatives before they make a final call. Okay, so we've explored two really different worlds, one that's super patient-facing and one that's all about the system level. And while they seem like polar opposites, success in both actually depends on a universal toolkit of core skills that go way beyond just knowing about drugs. You know, beyond all the pharmacology and clinical knowledge, success in modern pharmacy often boils down to these four critical skills: communication, empathy, adaptability, and teamwork. These are the things that take a good pharmacist and make them a great one, no matter where they work. And it makes perfect sense when you stop and think about it, right? Clear communication prevents serious medical errors. Empathy helps you understand what's really going on with a patient. The field is changing so fast, so you absolutely have to be adaptable. And of course, none of this happens in a vacuum. It's all about teamwork. So, all this evolution raises a really interesting question. What does the career path for a modern pharmacist even look like anymore? How does someone actually navigate from a traditional retail role into a rapidly changing field like managed care? Well, it turns out there's a pretty clear path. It really comes down to four key steps. First, you've got to reframe the experience you already have, highlight all those cost-conscious decisions you've made. Then, you have to learn the lingo of the field. After that, networking is absolutely crucial. And finally, finding a stepping stone role, like in prior authorization, is a super common way to get your foot in the door. So the world of pharmacy is clearly expanding in every direction, going deeper into patient care teams and at the same time going higher into system-level management. This leaves us with one last big question to think about. As healthcare keeps evolving, will the pharmacist's greatest impact be with the individual patient, with the overall system, or will it be in mastering the art of doing both?